MuniCast is brought to you by SUMA, the voice of Saskatchewan's urban municipalities. SUMA is proud to represent the urban communities that over 80% of Saskatchewan residents call home. MuniCast discusses issues related to local governance and municipal leadership, like best practices, education, reconciliation, resources, and more. In Season 8, we are focusing on SUMA's key advocacy initiatives. Diversity and inclusion are the cornerstones of thriving communities and a sustainable economy. Today, we will be exploring how embracing diverse perspectives and fostering inclusion can drive vibrant, resilient, and economically sustainable communities. Diversity brings unique experiences and innovation, while inclusion ensures everyone feels valued and empowered to contribute. These principles are essential for municipal growth, addressing labor shortages, strengthening social connections, and retention. In this episode, Verona Thibault, CEO of the Saskatchewan Economic Development Alliance, also known as SEDA, Lovely Magnaye, CAO for the Town of Tisdale, Jean Goerzen, Executive Director for the Saskatchewan Association of Immigrant Settlement and Integration Agencies, also known as SAISIA, and Ronke Edoho, owner of Foodie. Sit down with Augustina Osaseri, Advocacy Advisor with SUMA, to discuss how embracing diversity can support community and economic development. As CEO of SEDA, Verona works to strengthen and maintain resilient and vibrant communities across the province. Businesses and communities are interdependent, and ensuring the success of small business is a priority for her. Lovely has been working administratively for municipalities in Saskatchewan since 2014 and is honored to have the opportunity to support current and future administrators across the province. She currently serves as the CAO for the Town of Tisdale and the Executive Assistant for the Urban Municipal Administrators Association of Saskatchewan, also known as UMass. Jean spent many years in Africa working with nonprofits and community development and returned to Saskatoon in 2015, where she subsequently had the opportunity to work with Aid Saskatoon, now Prairie Harm Reduction, the Saskatchewan Intercultural Association, and Chep Good Food, before moving into her role as Executive Director for SAISIA. Ronke works as a chartered professional accountant and is also a certified nutrition and clinical weight loss specialist, as well as the author of the Lose It Nigerian books and plans. She hopes to improve well-being through better nutrition by providing easy-to-follow African food-centered and wholesome recipes to home cooks like herself. Conducting today's interview is Augustina Osaseri, Advocacy Advisor with SUMA, where she advocates for members by promoting community and economic development and supporting various related initiatives.
Hello, everyone. Welcome, Jane. Welcome, Lovely, welcome, Ronke, and welcome, Verona. As you all know, diversity and inclusion are the cornerstones of thriving communities and a sustainable economy. Today, we will be exploring how embracing diverse perspectives and fostering inclusion can actually drive vibrant, resilient, and economically sustainable communities. Diversity brings unique experiences and innovation, while inclusion ensures everyone feels valued and empowered to contribute within the community that they find themselves. Now, these principles are essential for municipal growth, addressing labor shortages, and striving social connections and retention. Verona, I think I'll come to you first. I'll start with you today. I know that last year, 2024, I attended the SEDA 2024 Provincial Summit, and I must tell you, that was a hit. It was very, very successful. Everybody wanted the event to continue. But there's something that is in alignment with what we want to talk about today, and that is that inclusion, that diversity that I saw in that event that day. Could you tell us, how do diversity and inclusion contribute to building thriving communities and a sustainable economy in our province?
Well, thanks for those great comments, and we hope to see you at the 2025 Summit, Tina, this fall. Again, as a provincial organization, we do our best to nurture inclusion as best we can. It's right now, especially when we're looking at instability in external markets, which let's face it, is likely going to continue. It's so important to have stable and resilient local and regional economies, is how we would put it. And diversity inclusion is key to that. So women, newcomers, Indigenous peoples, those that may still be underrepresented in our communities. It's been shown actually by research by Deloitte that engaging diversity can increase productivity in business and communities by 72%. And business themselves can see a 30% increase in profit margins. So again, the research is there. And economy is not just the traditional business industry growth. Economy is holistic. It includes the well-being drivers and the economic drivers. So it's so important that communities, municipalities, leadership groups look at inclusive practices themselves, to lead by example, and again, to prioritize diversity in their governance strategies. So those are some of the key points that I would start with, Tina.
Thank you so much, Verona. Now I know this because I don't think I've actually come across that research. I never knew that up to 72%. That's huge. Really, that is huge. Thank you so much, Verona, for bringing that up. And I want to go to Jean here. So I know that I actually sit on your Ukraine response group, representing SUMA. And just like what I told Verona, I see what your organization is doing. You guys are bringing together diverse individuals, people from different walks of life, people from different backgrounds. And I always enjoy it when there's any conversation at the table. So you already know what diversity is. You already know what inclusion is. So back to the same question, how do you think that diversity and inclusion contributes to building thriving communities and a sustainable economy within our province?
Well, I think when people from diverse backgrounds feel welcomed and valued in a community, they're more likely to stay. This has been an issue that we've been addressing. They obviously expand the consumer base, they contribute to the local economy, they invest in their communities. And I think, too, having a diverse population brings new talents, skills, and interesting perspectives. And that can only serve to enrich a community.
And that's so true. I know that one of the issues the province has now is that retention. I have been in different SUMA's convention. I oversee community and economic development dialogue with SUMA. One of the things I hear every time, year to year, is that retention challenge. Communities want to have people stay in their community, but people come and go. Some of them actually use these municipalities as a stepping stone to having their PR. Once they get their PR, they are out. So this is a big issue within the province, not just for municipalities, but even organizations. Some businesses don't have the right skill set in terms of human capital to, help them run the business. So you're actually very, very right. Now, let me go to Ronke. This is for you. I know you are a business person, and I know you've been in your community for a long time. Now, tell me, Ronke, what advice would you give to municipal governments on how they can effectively use diversity and inclusion as tools to build a stronger and more sustainable economy?
Thank you so much for that question. My background spans, and for people who don't know, I'm a business owner, but I'm also a CPA, and I happen to have worked in, municipal government, crown corporations for about 11 years of my career before I went into entrepreneurship. I think that as Saskatchewan people, we are good people. I mean, I've lived here for 20 years, and I like to tell people that I have options, but I love living here. I think Saskatchewan people are good people, but I also think that we are limited in terms of the exposure we have to the rest of the world. And that often translates in the work environment. So when we think about attracting people, making them stay, I think we have to think about inclusion in a way that really is open to everyone. So I'll give an example. If you're working in a department as a potential new immigrant, and when I talk about new immigrant, I'm not talking about people that came here for university. When you're 18 and you move to the prairies, you're moldable, right? You're not really exposed to the rest of the world. So your perspectives can really be a lot more flexible, which is good. But when you are maybe like a 30-year-old master's student who comes here, they have their background, they've worked with multinationals, and now they're in a place like Saskatchewan, and they're looking for opportunities to excel in the workplace, but they're not used to the politics of it. So maybe you don't necessarily drink, right? So you don't go out for beer at the end of the workday, or maybe you don't golf and you don't go golfing on the weekend. But the people that have been here know that that's really where promotions typically happen. It's in the after work drinking, and it's in the golfing, it's in the, going for coffee. Your average immigrant is thinking 15-minute coffee break. I have 4 of those. I don't want to go. I want to work. I want them to see me working because I think this is what is going to make me excel. But maybe the her perspective is, well, you're not going for coffee, so you're not really interested in that social aspect of it, right? So I think sometimes there is maybe a misalignment in what the work culture typically would promote, or the work culture will value, and what maybe an immigrant perspective might be sometimes. So I think there has to be maybe that better bridge into making people understand it's okay to take the coffee break. You're not going to be penalized for that. If you don't come out for beer on a Friday night, are there still other opportunities for you to equally excel as somebody who maybe participate in those extracurricular activities? So I think that's maybe where I see a bit of work in terms of like the workplace and in the entrepreneurial landscape as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ronke. I think one aspect that we could look at when we are always talking about inclusion is that aspect of you as an immigrant. You come in here, you want to unlearn the things that you have learned to learn new. So that space, that openness has to be there. Because when we're saying we want to be included, we want to be part of the community, you also want to not just bring everything that you have with you and start struggling. And I love the fact that you talked about younger ones coming in. You come in at 18, and so it's easier for the younger generation, younger immigrant generation, to move things around and easily adapt and be included in what is going on, because they haven't learned a lot of old stuff, right? But someone who is 30, 40, 50, wow, you will have to, at times it turns to frustration. Look at the beauty of where you are. Look at how you can move things around to actually get yourself integrated. Because one of the things I tell municipal leaders is, yes, you are including people because there's that diversity, but also you want to see how you can integrate people into the system. And I love what happened this recent municipal election. I saw a lot of immigrants come up, and that means the communities that they find themselves are actually including them, which is huge for newcomers, immigrant business owners, whatever we might call it. So thank you so much for bringing that perspective. Lovely. Let me go to you. You are an immigrant, or if you want to give advice to the local government on how they can effectively use diversity and inclusion as tools to build a stronger and more sustainable economy, what would that advice be?
Thanks, Augustina. So my family and I moved to Canada 11 years ago. We basically left everything, our career, our education, our family and friends. So one of the things that we're looking for in a community is an inclusive community. As mentioned earlier, inclusive communities create a sense of belonging, improving overall social cohesion and reducing inequalities. When people from diverse backgrounds like us feel valued and included, they are more likely to engage in civic activities, volunteerism, community development, and strengthening local initiatives, and most importantly, stay in a smaller community. Prior to moving to Tisdale, we were in Wynyard and Wadena, and Invermay. Those are smaller communities. My advice to municipal governments on how we can effectively use diversity and inclusion is to create cultural and recreational programs that celebrate diversity and bring different communities together. We must actively engage Indigenous communities, newcomers, and other groups in consultations and plannings to ensure policies that reflect the needs of all our residents. We should create programs that support immigrant entrepreneurs, Indigenous-owned business, and minority-led enterprises through grants, mentorships, and networking opportunities. Here in Tisdale, I'm very proud to say that we have the Northeast Newcomers Program help newcomers in the Northeast, particularly in Tisdale, and they provide information on how they could settle to smaller communities.
That's so wonderful. Thank you so much, Lovely, for that. And I know that there are other local immigration partnership programs, scattered in Saskatchewan. I just hope that our municipal leaders are listening to this podcast, because one of the things that can also help them is to identify the different organizations that support newcomers, that supports residents, that supports immigrants, that supports business owners, that support the Indigenous people. They need to find a way to start collaborating, working with them. And that brings me to my next question. Jim, what role do you think collaboration play in creating inclusive communities, and how can different sectors, your organization, different businesses like Ronke Zone, the government sector, work effectively to ensure that the diversity and inclusion that we talk about is actually achieved and is not just said on paper and that's it?
In the spirit of nothing about us without us, I think it's so important to engage with communities by consulting with different cultural groups, newcomers, Indigenous communities, and persons with disabilities to really understand their needs. I think you can create advisory groups to include representatives from diverse backgrounds that can provide input on municipal services and other services, actively recruit diverse voices for boards and committees. Just providing information in multiple languages also is helpful. Like, think about what the barriers are, but involving people in planning these initiatives that are going to affect them, you will learn from them just what is needed. I am a big believer, have become a big believer in intercultural competency training. Sometimes you assume that people have these intercultural competencies, and they do not. We actually have this 10-module thing going on over 6 months, training with settlement organizations and others in Saskatchewan. And so anyway, it's basically a structured approach to developing skills, knowledge, and attitudes needed to interact effectively and respectfully with people from various cultural backgrounds. Now, key is understanding one's own cultural background biases and how perceptions of others are shaped, to develop an awareness of cultural differences and avoid stereotypes or assumptions. Self-awareness, raising self-awareness, self-examination, that can be very uncomfortable, is really important to understanding your own biases, learning about different communication styles. This was brought up earlier, like being expected to go for a beer after work. That's not something that people are comfortable with. So to understand the different ways that people like to communicate and are communicating, I have this one example where that does not make me look good at all. I lived in Africa for many years. I lived in Tanzania for many years. My kids are Tanzanian. Well, now they're Tanzanian Canadian. And they were small. I was teaching social skills. And, they were interacting with expats, people from the UK, the US, Canada. But very much in the Tanzanian system in terms of school, stuff like that. So I taught them that making eye contact with everyone you talk to is vital to show respect, right? Okay, so that worked in the expat community. But in their schools, they got into so much trouble with teachers because it was like they're taking the teachers on, There are these teachers, and these teachers were feeling disrespected. And so like that, that was a really learning experience for me. You don't just make assumptions that these things that are important in, say, how I was brought up mean anything anywhere else, And I think that's an important lesson for employers. Like if you are interviewing somebody and they're not looking you in the eye, they are showing you respect. Here people might think, why, what's he hiding? But that's not the case at all. It's just a matter of people communicate respect. They communicate different things in different ways. But anyway, that's, like I said, that's an example where I do not shine. Self-examination is really important. You do have biases. You're making assumptions about people, these generalizations, and just examining them makes a huge difference to how you're going to interact with people. This training is being done, like there's different organizations here that do this training. Saskatchewan Intercultural Association, the Multicultural Council of Saskatchewan, and us, we are working with currently. And for reconciliation and Indigenous awareness training, the Office of the Treaty Commissioner can train getting people focused on history, reconciliation, and respectful engagement. Local immigration partnerships are in Saskatoon, Regina, Moose Jaw, with Current, Humboldt, and Yorkton. And that's a community-based initiative. It's funded by IRCC, Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. And it brings community stakeholders together to create a more welcoming and supportive environment for newcomers. So they bring municipalities, service providers, employers, educational institutions, everybody together. Because let's face it, it's not just settlement agencies that are working with newcomers, it's everybody. Everybody's engaging with newcomers. So how do we do that better? But I just wanted to make people aware of the local immigration partnerships. Like there's 6 in Saskatchewan now. I hope they continue to expand. We need to go beyond settlement agencies to involve everybody in engaging. Okay.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm very happy that you brought up some key things that I probably should highlight here. That first one is the intercultural competency training. So I attended an event recently in Saskatoon in celebration of the Black History Month. And one of the questions that they asked a panelist, you deal with different people, different individuals from diverse communities. Do you have any training, cultural sensitivity training that your officers take when we are making policies that will impact both Canadian population? We should do our best to also start thinking of how to bring in that cultural sensitivity into our policies, because you are now dealing with diverse people, right? Thank you so much for bringing that up, Jim.
From the smallest villages to the largest cities, every day your urban municipality supports you. The water that travels from tap to sewer, the emergency services that keep you safe, the parks, libraries, and rinks that you enjoy. Our cities, towns, villages, resort villages, and northern municipalities are urban hubs bringing people together. We are urban. Celebrate your municipality as part of the urban family.
Okay, so let me go to Verona. The same question. I know your organization does a lot of collaboration. So what role does collaboration play in creating inclusive communities, and how can different sectors work together to effectively achieve this?
Again, collaboration, we're a very lean nonprofit, so it's part of our DNA, and personally, it's my mission for being in Saskatchewan, I think. It's foundational in Saskatchewan, in my view, because of so many communities, municipalities, Indigenous, other organization groups serving the province. And as you know, the world is an interesting place. We have a lot of complex challenges. We look at housing, we look at poverty reduction, just naming two. We're not going to be able to solve those without working together, just in terms of our skill sets. The views we bring to the table, and my lived experience, I know, is much different from you lovely ladies. We all bring different views, different aspects of life and experience that we can bring to the equation. We can ideally leverage joint opportunities or for funding or financial models that will support some of these complex challenges that we need to solve. So diversity is key to that. We need everybody's voices. I think that's my, again, it goes back to what I mentioned earlier as well. Well-being drivers and economic drivers. We put an image up on the SEDA website that illustrates the provincial ecosystem. We're really trying to educate that economic development, the economic sectors are not what they were 100 years ago when we first started to get into this terminology, and business development and economic development. In Saskatchewan, they're all together. They're two sides of the same coin. We cannot have economic sustainability without a safe, inclusive, healthy community. We cannot have a safe, healthy, inclusive community without economic drivers, without workforce, without jobs, without taxes for the municipalities. So it's all part of the ecosystem. We have to start working closer together, just from a perspective of efficacy and financial viability.
Thank you so much. And I love that, because I know that is actually key. And I know that your organization does that a lot, at least with us. We have different initiatives that we're working together, all to support over 400 municipalities, which is key. Lovely. I want to come to you with the same question. And I know you are within the municipal sector, and we've done some projects together as well. So I know that you are big in collaboration. So what role does collaboration actually play in creating inclusive communities, and how can different sectors work together to effectively achieve this, and also make sure that the people in their community are welcome and happy to stay there?
Yeah, so as Jean had mentioned earlier, we must ensure that collaboration efforts include voices from diverse backgrounds, including Indigenous leaders, immigrant communities, and people with disabilities. We must conduct research and community feedback to shape policies and initiatives that address real needs. And as Verona had said, we must partner with community organizations to support education, skills trainings, and social programs that empower marginalized groups. As an immigrant, you always feel like you're an underdog, right? Like through collaboration, you could feel like meeting all these people, getting to know them more, and understanding different cultures will make you feel like you're part of the group, you're part of the community. However, collaboration should not be just a once a year, twice a year thing. We should establish formal partnerships and regular meetings between sectors to align goals and share progress, right? Like on the side of municipalities, although we're very short staffed and there's no specific person that would deal with like culture planning and cultural research, it is really important that you touch base with different community groups to make collaboration better, communication better among all the members of diverse communities. When I came to Tisdale, one of the things that I have noticed was there are more than 300 Filipinos here, but I was the first person that was hired by the town. And then I asked, why is there no any other Filipino working for the town? Coming to Canada, they're skilled, they're educated, they're well experienced, but maybe our community hasn't reached out to various groups that could provide expertise in education and skills. And that is something that we have to work with different organizations in our community.
Thank you so much. That makes a lot of sense. And I'll say this. When we talk about collaboration, you want to also be able to think outside the box, right? If you're a municipality and you want to collaborate with other municipalities, or you want to do what we call regional collaboration, you want to identify the projects. What are the projects that we can work together with all the other municipalities? And it will save you time, it will save you money, it will save you resources, right? And I think some communities are doing very good around this, but it's something that we need to re-echo to encourage membership and encourage other organizations. It has to be, you have to be able as a community to know where the alignment is. I can't tell you I want to collaborate, or as one representing municipalities, you want to collaborate on things that are not strategic about your objective, So you want to make sure that when you're looking for organizations to work with, whatever initiative you're proposing to them or they are bringing back to you must align with your organizational strategy, organizational objectives and goals. And by that, it's easier and things are more moving towards success than if you just, let's work together and you're ironing out, sorry, I don't think this can work. No, start from the beginning. You want to first find out, this organization, can we really work together? What can we do together? So let's look at, Ronke, the same question I want to ask you. Collaboration is key most of the time in creating inclusive communities. No man is an island, and like they always tell us, right? So how can different sectors, including businesses like yours, how can we all work together effectively to achieve this inclusive community, or ensure that diversity is part of what our ecosystem has?
I will piggyback off of something that Lovely said, right? So she said social programs that support marginalized groups. I would like to add to that and say social and economic programs that support marginalized groups. So assuming I'm a newcomer, I'm interested in starting a food-related business, I can probably find 10 organizations that can tell me how to open a business, so how to register a business. But if I look into the entire Saskatchewan landscape, I can barely find a commercial kitchen that can support me to start a food business that works for interprovincial sales. So when it comes to social, so we have a lot of organizations that are maybe providing the same services, but maybe those services are not necessarily where it starts and ends for somebody who, I'm bringing this back to kind of like that business perspective, or somebody who is interested in maybe starting a business as a new immigrant, right? So there are lots of organizations that might be able to tell me how to register a business, what documentation I need to provide. But at the end of the day, if I want to do, say, catering, or I want to start a sauce business, and I want to make it a legitimate one, there is nobody that can tell me this is where you go to help you get a nutrition facts table, or maybe this is where you go to make sure that your acidity level is up to par with what CFIA requires. From my perspective as somebody who works in that food space, I have been looking to build a commercial kitchen for a long time. But a bank will always say, what is the profitability? But it's not always about profit. It's about the potential 50 businesses that now has somewhere to go to produce something that could potentially turn into another big business that hires Go. Please go ahead, Verona.
Oh, I just so agree with you. And this, I wanted to segue into the conversation this morning, social enterprise. And I don't know if this is the right, time, but I know at least one commercial kitchen, a collective that tried to get off the ground in Saskatoon and couldn't because of lack of investment. And if you look at, we're really an advocate for social enterprise. So that comes up again and again because in Canada, most social enterprises are run or they serve diverse cultures, right? And talk about filling gaps in the marketplace, in business, in rural, in services. So I could go on and on, but yes, you just brought up such a good point that we could expand on for another hour, so I won't.
Yeah, and I think that in terms of like collaboration, it would be very good to bring business leaders who maybe have built successful businesses to ask them about the gaps that they can potentially identify and help, start those conversations, point them in the right directions, provide opportunities to maybe fund match if people are looking to take it on, right? So maybe the government can bring in 60%. It's not always about profitability, but I think we have to start thinking about initiatives that support job creation, business incentives, infrastructure projects that really helps businesses to not just start, but thrive in the community.
I have one small follow-up question for you. I was in an event and I remember one of the things that was brought up is how communities, how municipalities can support immigrant business owners. I wanted to find out from you, what support have you received so far? If there's any, if there is none, what would you have loved to see?
So what support have I received from municipal government or provincial government? I don't want to say none. I'm just trying to think. So there are lots of organizations, right? So you have something like the Step One. I think they used to be called Step One. They have opportunities where they can teach you how to register your business. If you want to see professionals, for example, you only have to pay about $25. So you could see a lawyer for $25 for 30 minutes, which is amazing, right? Because, the alternative is very expensive. I was part of a women's program. It used to be called Awesome. I believe it's now called Feed. Which is a program for women who are interested in food. That was also a good opportunity for me to kind of learn. Like I said, I'm an accountant, I'm a CPA, that's my background, but I've always loved food. And I think that I have great ideas. So how do you go from the ideas to actually having a physical product? So going through that program was excellent. And then, in terms of like what I would love from the provincial government, or from municipal government or government in general. There's so many things that we grow on the prairies. So legumes is a great example. In the immigrant community, legumes legumes form maybe like 40%. You eat beans in form of moi moi or akara. So how can maybe the government look to this immigrant community to say, hey, we're trying to excel in plant protein. What opportunities are there for you to bring something new to the table? I don't think that there are avenues for those conversations. Oat is another example, right? Saskatchewan makes different kinds of oat. High protein oat is a great one. And I always think about like opportunities to create something with new flavors and bring it to the table. But there's always that barrier in, where do I go? Who do I have this conversation with? Who is the right strategy partner to potentially have this conversation? Like, those conversations, at least to the best of my knowledge, are not happening. And there is no straight path to having those conversations or who you're supposed to go to have those conversations with. So I think even from like the provincial to the municipal, bringing those conversations and having a table to have those conversations would be good. And social enterprise is another one, right? If you're trying to start something that the bank would tell you, well, this is not a profitable business, it's not always about profitability. It's about potential for employment. It's about helping others grow businesses that might maybe become the next $1 million or multi-million-dollar businesses in the future. Who do you go to have those conversations with? Say, hey, here is a business plan. It will not get funded by the bank because, there's no profitability for the next 5-6 years, but it has social potential. How do we potentially collaborate to make this happen? So I think for me, those are gaps they're missing. And I would love to maybe get plugged in if there's just things that exist that I don't know about, or things that can get started to help support entrepreneurs in the province.
Wow. Thank you so much, Ronke. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I love the fact that you brought back collaboration, because that's the key. So if the bank is not funding you as an individual, is there anything that group of entrepreneurs can do together, work together, and probably find a way to raise funds? I know it's so difficult to get a loan, especially when you're just starting.
I was going to make a comment, if that's okay.
Go ahead, please.
To be perfectly honest, the lack of funding for economic development officer is one of the challenges, because if you look at the different services that the municipality has to provide, unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's a priority, right? So the question about what can you get from the municipality, probably my answer would be none. That's just to be perfectly honest, because we have aging infrastructures, we have so many priorities to address the day-to-day needs of our residents. And I'm not saying that economic development is not important, but among all these other things, it's not just being prioritized as of the moment by most, if not all, of the municipalities. So I think, to connect that with your question, the biggest challenge that we face now is the grant funding. There are some community groups that get support from the municipality through Sask lotteries, but those are towards recreation and culture. But there's no specific thing that talks about economic development. Like Wadena, Wynyard, Tisdale, we don't have a dedicated person that deals with economic development. We don't have an economic development officer. Although in my community now, we do have Invest Tisdale, and it's a regional collaboration project with the RM of Tisdale. And we both hire an economic development officer. But his focus now is more on big investors. Another challenge that I could think of off the top of my head is the resistance to change and unconscious bias. There are some communities and institutions that are resistant to change, particularly when it comes to shifting long-standing policies and practices. There are communities that they're so cliquey, you just can't get into their circle. So as you get in to a community where unconscious biases impact hiring, service delivery, and community engagement efforts, it's so hard for a newcomer or an immigrant to break those barriers.
I'll probably say I'm wearing two hats here. One as Advocacy Advisor for SUMA, and the other as an immigrant. So for me as an immigrant, I think municipalities can actually do more. It doesn't have to be funding. Of course, you can expect municipalities to come and fund individual immigrants or business owners. No, but they can provide different forms of support. We've talked about collaboration. They can work with organizations like the Local Immigration Partnership that supports immigrants, that have different programs that support organizations that support immigrants. They can also go out to check other organizations. One of the things we can do, charity begins at home. When you have council meetings, you have immigrants in your community that are running different restaurants. Go buy their food, taste it. You want to know me? You want to understand who I am? Eat my food. I eat pizza. Pizza is not my food back home. Ronke will tell you, and just that little support can go a long way. People may not see that, but it can go a long way. They can also have policies, have integration policies.
Financially, like municipalities cannot provide support to various groups, but you're right. Like there are various ways that we can support diverse groups, like the newcomers, for example. Like from the town of Tisdale, and I'm not sure if other municipalities can do this, but I would really encourage them to do this because we are 2-3 hours away from the nearest immigration settlement. The town of Tisdale has been applying grant funding through the IRCC, and that's how we came up with the Northeast Newcomer Services Program. So this program has been assisting newcomers in finding employment by offering job search resources. We help them build resumes. We connect them to local employers. We're offering language assessments, and if they wanted to go through like English language classes to enhance their communication, through this program, we provide funding for drivers or employability needs. Like we could provide safety boots if you can't afford one, and all those things. So not small communities. I'm not sure if they're aware that there is a grant funding through IRCC. And I really encourage everybody, especially those that are far from the immigration settlement services, to apply for this grant funding for your community.
Thank you for taking the time to join me to discuss ways to support resilient and inclusive communities. Now, let me ask if anyone has any final comments you probably would love to leave our listeners with. Okay, go for it, Jean.
Okay, I wanted to make people aware of the annual Rural Sask Job Fair. It's a key component of the Saskatchewan Work, Live and Thrive initiative. And basically, it's an annual event that serves as a hub for collaboration among municipalities, employers, and newcomers. So during the fair, representatives from municipalities deliver presentations about their towns. They explain the benefits of relocation for newcomers. And then job seekers have the opportunity to engage directly with the municipal representative, but also employers that want to be there as well. And this session facilitates face-to-face interaction and enables newcomers to ask questions, get more information about things like the cost of housing, availability of schools, transportation, available resources, as well as potential jobs. So it's just an opportunity for municipalities, employers, and job seekers to come together face-to-face. And there's nothing that replaces face-to-face interaction. So.
Oh, sorry. When is that, Jean?
Well, I'm just thinking. The one this past year was in Regina. It moves around as well, so I'd have to find out when that is going to happen this year, and I will let you know.
Is there any other person that has any final comments? Anything at all? Okay, go for it, Verona. Thank you.
Okay, thanks again for the invite today. This has been great. I just want to conclude with, and it touches on some of what Lovely has been talking about, but again, for communities to consider that more holistic, cohesive approach. We have many demands for financial resources, funding, grants. But the more we can drill down and flatten the silos, which again, admittedly, are coming probably from a higher level, but when it gets down to a community level, the more we can flatten those. And economic development is a sector that we can do that. Last year, SEDA piloted community safety and well-being planning in 4 rural communities. And that experience was very illuminating. And Nipawin, as close to where Lovely is now, was one of those pilots. And all these community groups came together and they ended up seeing how much more effective they could be by working to joint goals that were established through the working group. And they ended up doing economic development work. Again, the onus would be on our listeners to reach out to some of those communities. But we can come together and look at those diverse sectors of community through a community economic development lens. It can be done. And I would like to encourage municipalities and neighboring municipalities and nations to go that route.
Thank you so much, Verona. Is there any other final word?
I just wanted to say that fostering diversity and inclusion in municipal administration requires a long-term commitment, proactive policy changes, and collaboration with community members. And by addressing these challenges, we can build a more equitable, welcoming, and sustainable communities that benefit everyone.
Thank you so much, lovely. Any other final word?
Retention in communities are definitely important, but I think that from that immigrant perspective, it's always a good idea to maybe have some sort of avenue for feedback. It's like an exit interview, right? If communities are not able to retain people, sticking to the same things that we've been doing is probably not helping. So are there opportunities for the exit type of interviews to help understand why people are not staying in the communities, and then building programs or providing opportunities to address those potential gaps?
This brings us to the end of another episode of MuniCast. Thank you for listening in. On March 26th, tune in for another bonus episode of MuniCast, where SUMA CEO Jean-Marc Nadeau sits down for a conversation with Chief Marshal Robert Cameron to discuss the Saskatchewan Marshals Service. Season 8 of MuniCast will continue in April, with the episode Bylaw Enforcement for Public Safety being released on April 9th. Is your municipality a SUMA member? Did you know elected officials and staff have access to resources, meeting and webinar recordings, templates, and more through the member portal? Each member municipality has one shared login to the portal. Chat with your administrator or contact the SUMA office for more information.